Welcome back. This video is the first in a series of unsolved missing people and murder cases in South Australia. I share the story of each victim in the hope that it may jog someone's memory, or that so much time has passed since some of these cold cases occurred that someone may finally feel comfortable in coming forward with any information, no matter how small, that may help bring closure for the families who so desperately still wait for answers. Each part of the series will feature the story of around 6 missing people or murder victims. So let's begin. The murder of Lena Marciano in March 1978 remains one of South Australia's most enduring mysteries. 19-year-old student teacher Lena Marciano left her Wavell home in Adelaide on Wednesday, March 1st, on a motorcycle to attend a Greek dancing class at Nailsworth Primary School on Main North Road. She never made it to the class, and her body was found 3 days later at the Dry Creek rubbish dump, further north of the city. She was found bound and gagged and wrapped in a brown curtain. 2 other curtains of the same material, manufactured in either West Germany or Belgium, were also found at the dump, with a third found several hundred metres away. The curtains had blood and forging fibres on them. This innocent young woman had been bashed, knocking out her teeth, bludgeoned with multiple blows to the head, strangled, stabbed in the heart, and had several fingers broken, perhaps while attempting to protect her head from the brutal and frenzied attack. Her blue and white Honda motorcycle, registration number SK446, was found at a KFC restaurant opposite the school, but her motorcycle helmet has never been recovered. Within months, police ran out of leads to the killer or killers. Miss Marciano's sister, Teresa Kellett, has said the family is still tortured by not knowing what happened to their loved one. She said after all this time, the person who did this needs to be brought to justice. Our family needs closure. The investigation into Miss Marciano's murder was reopened in 1991 when a female cleaner at Nailsworth Primary School provided fresh information to police. A portable classroom had been relocated to Mount Barker in the Adelaide Hills and was thoroughly searched, including the removal of floorboards, in the hope of finding the missing teeth. But nothing was discovered. It did, however, spark more media publicity, reigniting public interest in the case. While they have a strong suspect, police do not have enough evidence to charge the man, who is now elderly, with her murder. The case file has just been subjected to a comprehensive review, and as a result, several exhibits are now being subjected to advanced DNA testing in order to gain more evidence in the investigation. Case Officer Detective Brevet Sergeant Paul Tucker said the suspect in the case had been interviewed on several occasions and a DNA sample taken from him as part of the inquiry. During his last interview, he initially cooperated, but then terminated the interview. Police believe it is highly likely the attack was random, as it was only the second time Lena had attended the school for the dance lessons. It is also likely that she was grabbed in the school grounds and murdered in one of the classrooms. While no motive has been uncovered, the fact that she was bound and gagged when found indicates there may have been an intention to sexually assault her, but there is no evidence of this occurring. Major Crime continually review all unsolved murders and ask that if anyone has any piece of information regarding the savage murder of Lena Marciano, to call Crime Stoppers SA. A $200,000 reward is available for anyone with information leading to the conviction of her killer. Rihanna Barrow was just 12 years old when she disappeared without a trace on October 7th, 1992. Rihanna lived in her Wakefield Avenue, Morford Vale home with her mother Paula and her brother Shannon. Her parents were divorced and her father was living in Queensland with his new wife, but they remained close. She usually spent school holidays with her father, but this time had decided to stay at home with her mother and brother. Rihanna had an American pen pal, and on the morning of October 7th had decided to go to the nearby Raynella shopping centre to purchase a card to send to her. There was a bus strike that day, and she would have to walk the short 1.5 kilometre or 20-minute distance. Her mother kissed her goodbye that morning as she left for work, unaware that it would be the last time she would ever see her daughter. Rihanna was seen heading in the directions of the shops at 10:30 a.m. Sources confirm that she purchased a card from the news agency at 11:19 a.m. She was seen again later between 12:05 p.m. and 12:30 p.m. walking through the grounds of Morford Vale High School and Stanvac Primary School, carrying a small bag that is thought to have contained the card she purchased. And unconfirmed reports said she was sighted at 4 p.m, standing at the junction of David Terrace and Acre Avenue, which is approximately a 6-minute walk from her home in Wakefield Avenue. She was alone, but an incident had occurred at that intersection earlier, and it was later revealed that two men in a white Tirana sedan bearing Victorian number plates had tried to entice a 13-year-old girl into the car. This is a police sketch of one of the suspects. Rihanna's mother returned home from work at 4:10 p.m. Everything looked normal. The door was locked, the television was playing the afternoon programming, and a record was sitting on the living room floor as if it had been played and carelessly discarded. Most tellingly, the card Rihanna had been so eager to buy was sitting on the table, meaning that she had returned home at some point in the afternoon. Only Rihanna was nowhere to be seen. None of her belongings were missing. Paula Barrow called her daughter's friends, knocked on neighbours' doors, and by 6 p.m. a missing persons report was filed. Neither the white Tirana or its occupants were ever located, and despite a widespread search and an intensive media campaign calling for any information, Rihanna was never found. Paula Barrow lived in the Wakefield Avenue home for many years afterwards, hoping that one day her daughter would return. While she now accepts that Rihanna may no longer be alive, she hopes that someone will still come forward with any information that may help bring the family closure and find the person responsible for this terrible crime almost 27 years ago. A $1 million reward has been offered for information leading to a conviction. If you have any information, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, please call Crime Stoppers SA. On the 16th of January 1998, 16-year-old Heather Turner spent the day at Semaphore Beach with her best friend, Kaylee Edmonds. Heather left the beach and said she was heading home to Largs Bay and was meeting someone, but would head to Kaylee's home later that day. She never arrived. Kaylee says, after a certain point, I called her house to see where she was, and at that time her mum told me she had never made it home. 2 weeks later, on the 31st of January, the teenager's body was discovered by police, partly submerged in a creek at Port Gawler. It was Kaylee who recognised her friend's jewellery on the news and called Crime Stoppers. Heather had been bashed, and police believe she may have been kept somewhere else before the body was dumped. A suspect was interviewed, but there has been insufficient evidence to proceed with the matter. Police believe the teenager was murdered at an unknown location and her body moved to Portgalla several days before it was discovered. She was fully dressed in the items of clothing she was last seen wearing on Friday the 16th of January. However, the shoulder bag she had with her over the weekend, a distinctive Tweety Bird bag, was missing and has never been recovered by police. 20 years later, re-looking into cold cases as part of Operation Persist, police say they believe that Heather somehow ended up at a house in Ashton Road, Davern Park, after leaving Semaphore Beach. She is believed to have been with a group of between 4 and 8 people aged in their 20s. Detective Brevet Sergeant Sean Osborne from SA Police said, "We believe that Heather left that house with the intention of travelling home, but failed to arrive. Police believe people who were at that house that night have information that could lead to an arrest, and they're urging them to break their silence." Detective Osborne said they really would have the keys to assist us to solve Heather's murder. Heather's friend Kaylee said, "There's a family that's been shattered, and there's a mother that's had to lay awake for 20 years and wonder what happened to her beautiful daughter. It is hoped that a $1 million reward will be enough to persuade someone to finally tell the truth and end a family's torment." Michaela Godot, 15, was born in Germany on the 15th of April 1967. She migrated to Australia in November 1981 with her mother, stepfather and brother. They lived at Walpole Street, Davern Park, until her mother, unable to find full-time work as a nurse, returned to look for work in Germany in July 1982. Michaela, her stepfather and brother remained in Adelaide. Once employment was found, Emmy Godot informed her family to sell the family home and make preparations to return to Germany. Michaela was last seen going to bed at about 10 p.m. on Sunday the 19th of December 1982. She was gone by 5:35 a.m. the following morning. When Michaela disappeared, her stepfather, Herwith Godot, told police she had simply run away and taken some cash, toiletries, her passport, and strangely, some sleeping tablets. Detective Senior Sergeant Ward, working the case, said it appeared that Mr. Godot was not coping well with looking after the 3 children. He also had difficulty obtaining work. Agencies were not liaising at that time, and little did police know Michaela and her stepfather's relationship were in the eyes of the Department of Child Welfare. Her school had noted her being withdrawn, and on one occasion she was seen with a black eye. Child welfare authorities were aware concern had been raised about Michaela's well-being, and alarm bells were ringing. They had even intervened, placing her in the care of Anglicare for short periods in order to diffuse the issues at home, but police were not advised. But Emmy Godot, Michaela's mother, said they had a good relationship. They got on quite well. When she wanted something, she would always go to him instead of me, she said. She knew she would get her way. Herwith Godot had denied any involvement in Michaela's disappearance. He did cooperate with police up until he was asked about his vehicle, a Range Rover. Then he hired a lawyer, and that was all police could get. The car was sold on to a touring company out of state and unable to be found for forensic testing in the following years. Major Crime Case Officer, Detective Sergeant Paul Ward, said he suspects the circumstances of Michaela's disappearance may have been concocted to try to fool police. Mr. Godot, now in his 70s, lives at Salisbury Downs. Somewhat strangely, several businesses he has operated since Michaela vanished have featured her name. Emmy Godow, who has worked as a nurse in Victoria since 1988, has been clinging to the hope that her missing daughter Michaela is still alive. "Maybe I will never get resolution," she said. "Maybe I will, but that is something I'm still hoping for." If anyone has any information on this case or the whereabouts of Michaela Godow, who would be now almost 52 years old, please contact Crime Stoppers SA. Like thousands of other young people, 19-year-old Daniel Shepherd and his twin brother Michael decided to party hard on New Year's Eve 1994. Michael recalls, "We all met at a friend's place at Cheltenham around 6 or 7 o'clock. We had a couple of drinks and caught the train and then the tram to Glenelg. The group of 8 friends kicked off the festivities at a nightclub called Lenny's, but after midnight they went their separate ways. Daniel went into the city with friends. I didn't," Michael says. "I caught the tram and then the train home on my own." Daniel left with Ben Silvani and Ben's girlfriend Desiree Layton to Rave nightclub in Hindley Street, followed by Empire, a pool joint in nearby Rose Street. Ben and Desiree left Empire at about 3 a.m, but Daniel stayed, chatting to a woman named Pamela Tanner for about half an hour. Tanner later told police that she last saw Daniel at about 4 a.m. It was around that time that Daniel left the club and walked to Adelaide railway station, just a few minutes away, where he ran into another group of acquaintances, 3 women and a man. At 4:13 they all boarded a train and Daniel sat talking to the girls, while the man kept company with another group of friends. Daniel told the girls he was going home to bed and waved them goodbye when they got off at Alberton. A few minutes later, when Daniel reached his stop, he said goodbye to the man who watched as Daniel left the train at Port Adelaide. It was 4:35 a.m. on Sunday, January 1st, 1995, and even though it was just a 12-minute walk, Daniel never made it home. Michael woke on New Year's morning to find his brother's bed had not been slept in. He says, "We started to ring around, but no one had seen him." Once they'd exhausted all of Daniel's friends, Patricia Shepherd reported her son missing. Police began extensive searches of the area from Port Adelaide railway station to the Shepherd's home in West Lakes. They also combed the riverbed to look for any sign of the missing teen. Police divers were used to search vast areas of the Port River. A reenactment of Daniel's last known movements was shown on TV in a bid to extract more information from the public. The public did come forward, with suggestions ranging from a gang of skinheads to drug debts and an occult sacrifice. Police followed up every lead, tip-off and rumour, but nothing panned out. More specifically, one suggestion linked Daniel's disappearance to the family, a group whose members abducted, drugged, sexually abused and murdered young men aged 14 to 25 in the late 1970s and early 80s. Only one member, Bevan Spencer von Idem, is serving time behind bars, and that's for the 1983 murder of Richard Kelvin, the son of Adelaide newsman Rob Kelvin. Not only was Daniel in the target age bracket, but at just 165 centimetres tall, the affable teenager would have been vulnerable to predators. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case grew cold. In an unsettling twist, years later, a nurse living on Jane Flaxman Court, just 2 minutes away from Daniel's home, reached out to his family through a Facebook page they had set up for Daniel. I'll leave a link to the Facebook page in the description below. She told the family that she was outside smoking a cigarette at 4:45 a.m. on January 1st, 10 minutes after Daniel had left the train station. She said she heard a young man screaming, "F off, F off, I don't need a lift." Then she heard muffled screaming and car doors slamming, and a car came down the street with no lights on. The woman said the car was a blue or silver sedan, similar to a Holden Statesman or XD Falcon, with a man driving and 3 men in the back seat. But she could not make out the faces or take the registration because of the darkness. The woman rang police, but it was before Daniel had even been reported missing, so no dots were connected. However, the woman rang again when she heard reports of the missing youth. Daniel's family were never told of the witness by police and was shocked and angered to discover that a possible lead had been ignored so early in Daniel's disappearance. The major crime detective leading the cold case probe told the family that the woman had not wavered in her claims, but he could not explain why it had never been raised in 23 years. Now, after 24 long years, Daniel's family are still waiting for answers. A $200,000 reward is offered to anyone with information leading to a conviction. If you or someone you know have any information that could help in Daniel's case, please contact Crime Stoppers SA. It's been 46 years since Darren Jason Shannon, known as Jason, was snatched by his father from his grandparents' house in the northern Adelaide suburb of Elizabeth West, now known as Davern Park, during an access visit on June 9, 1973. Just hours later, his father, John Barry Shannon, known as Barry, who had a history of mental health problems, died in a head-on collision car crash just north of Adelaide, near Roseworthy. But there was no sign of baby Jason in the wreck. Police conducted an extensive search, including checking hotels, motels and petrol stations, but little Jason was nowhere to be found. The case received significant media attention, but no leads were forthcoming. Jason would be 47 years old now, and his mother, Michelle, has never stopped wondering what happened to her son. Now remarried and living in the UK, Michelle has never stopped clinging to the hope that her son is still alive. At the time, police held fears he could be dead, murdered that night and his body disposed of. But it was hoped that he had been left with friends, said Detective Sergeant George. John Shannon's parents and brother are deceased now, but if a friend of the family knows of a secret baby or helped raise the child, we would appeal for them to come forward to lay this mystery to rest. Michelle, now almost 70, told the Adelaide Advertiser newspaper recently that she still vividly remembers the night her son disappeared. "I can remember Barry came to the house twice that day, which was unusual," she said. "He came early in the afternoon and again in the evening." She said her own father tried but failed to catch her estranged husband as he fled with baby Jason, something which played on her dad's memory for a long time before he passed. Michelle admits she cannot extinguish the faint hope that she might find out what happened to Jason and that he may still be alive. "I think any human being would have that hope," she said. There is a reward of up to $1 million for information that can close this case. If you know anything about baby Shannon, please contact Crime Stoppers SA. Thank you for watching part 1 in this series of unsolved missing and murdered in South Australia. There are so many families still waiting and praying for answers about their loved ones. They cannot grieve without closure, and there is no closure until these cases have been solved. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. and subscribe if you would like to see more murder, mystery and mayhem. Until next time.